The Discovery. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the research vessel Horizon, her eyes fixed on the massive structure floating in the darkness of the Centauri belt. The object before her defied conventional spaceship design. Its surface was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, despite being perfectly solid according to their scans. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," called out Marcus Rodriguez, her chief engineer. His voice carried an unusual tremor of excitement. "The energy readings, they're unlike anything in our database." Sarah made her way through the cramped corridors of the Horizon, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. The discovery had been pure chance. A routine survey of asteroid mining sites had revealed an anomalous reading that led them to this remarkable find. The engineering bay was alive with holographic displays, each showing different aspects of their discovery. Marcus pointed to a particular reading that pulsed with a steady rhythm. "Look at this pattern. It's not random noise. There's a clear sequence here, almost like it's breathing." Sarah finished. She leaned closer to the display, her heart racing. After 15 years of studying xenorchaeological sites across 3 star systems, this was different. This ship, if it could be called that, was intact. The team had already nicknamed it the Lazarus, for it seemed to be neither dead nor truly alive. Initial scans suggested it was at least 50,000 years old, yet its hull showed no signs of micrometeorite damage. It was as if time itself had flowed around it, leaving it untouched. "What's the status on the entry point we found?" Sarah asked, pulling up another holographic display. "We've managed to map out a safe approach," Marcus replied, bringing up a 3D model of the vessel. "There's what appears to be an airlock mechanism here." He pointed to a section near what they assumed was the ship's midpoint. "The interesting part is that it seems to be actively maintaining an atmosphere inside." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "After 50,000 years. That's not even the strangest part," Marcus continued. "The internal temperature is exactly 292.15 Kelvin. 19 degrees Celsius, Sarah whispered. "Room temperature for humans." The implications were staggering. Either this was an incredible coincidence, or the ship had been waiting for them. Sarah pushed the thought aside. Anthropomorphizing alien artifacts was a common trap in xenorchaeology, one she couldn't afford to fall into. "Prep the boarding team," she ordered. "Full containment protocols. I want every second documented." 4 hours later, Sarah led a team of 5 through the airlock. Despite her years of experience, her hands trembled slightly as she activated her suit's external lights. The interior of the vessel was unlike anything she had ever seen. The corridors seemed to be grown, rather than built, with smooth, organic curves that somehow managed to feel both alien and inexplicably familiar. "Look at these markings." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their linguistics expert, pointed to patterns that lined the walls. "They're similar to the external designs, but there's a clear progression. They're getting more complex as we move deeper in." Sarah's helmet sensors detected no harmful radiation or biological agents, but they maintained protocol. The team moved carefully through the corridors, mapping as they went. Each chamber they passed seemed to respond to their presence, surfaces shifting slightly to reflect their lights in ways that made the walls appear to glow. Then they found the central chamber. "My God," Marcus breathed, his voice barely a whisper over the comm. The room was massive, at least 30 meters in diameter, with a central column that pulsed with a soft, blue light. Around it, suspended in what appeared to be fields of pure energy, were countless artifacts. Objects of clearly different technological origins and eras, all perfectly preserved. But it was the sphere of darkness at the room's center that caught Sarah's attention. It hung there, seemingly absorbing all light that touched it, except for tiny points of brightness that moved across its surface like stars. As the team spread out to begin their initial survey, Sarah approached the central column. The patterns here were different, more ordered, almost like circuit diagrams, but infinitely more complex. She reached out, her gloved hand hovering just above the surface. "Dr. Chen," Yuki's voice carried a note of warning. "We should wait for more detailed scans before." The surface beneath Sarah's hand shifted, and a ripple of light spread through the entire chamber. The darkness at the center of the room pulsed once, and a voice filled their helmets, not through their comms, but seemingly directly in their minds. "Protocol match confirmed. Human presence detected. Initiating revival sequence." The words were in perfect English, yet Sarah somehow knew that each member of her team heard it in their native language. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just first contact with alien technology. This was first contact with something that had been waiting for humanity to find it. As lights began to pulse through the chamber in complex patterns, Sarah realized that this wasn't just another xenorchaeological find. This was the moment everything changed. Humanity had just inherited something vast and ancient, and she had a feeling they weren't ready for what came next. "All teams, maintain positions," she ordered, forcing calm into her voice. "Document everything. We're about to make history." The sphere of darkness began to expand, and within it, Sarah could see what looked like galaxies being born and dying in moments. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a library, a museum, and possibly something far more significant. And it had chosen them. As the revival sequence continued, Sarah Chen realized that her life's work hadn't been leading to this discovery. It had been leading to what came after. Whatever this vessel was, whoever had built it, they had left it here like a seed, waiting for the right moment to bloom. That moment, it seemed, was now. Awakening. The darkness that had filled the central chamber began to coalesce into something more defined. Dr. Sarah Chen and her team watched in stunned silence as the swirling galaxies within the sphere assembled themselves into a humanoid figure composed of what appeared to be pure starlight. "I am the curator," the figure announced, its voice resonating with the same multilingual clarity as before. "This vessel is the archival, last of the great libraries created by the Precursor Alliance." Marcus's sensors were working overtime, trying to analyze the being before them. "Dr. Chen, these readings, it's not a hologram. It's some kind of controlled quantum field manipulation." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific training warring with her sense of wonder. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, xenorchaeologist from Earth. Are you an artificial intelligence?" The figure's star-speckled form rippled with what might have been amusement. "Your terms are insufficient. I am a quantum consciousness created to preserve and protect the knowledge of 10,000 civilizations that came before. And now, after 50,000 years of waiting, humanity has achieved the necessary parameters for contact." "Parameters?" Yuki asked, her linguistics training evident in her careful pronunciation. "What were you waiting for?" "A species that had achieved space travel independently, yet retained its capacity for wonder," the curator replied. "Your presence here, your methods of investigation, your careful protocols, they all indicate a civilization ready to learn." The chamber around them began to transform. The artifacts suspended in energy fields descended slowly, taking positions in newly formed alcoves along the walls. The central columns pulsing became more pronounced, and holographic displays materialized throughout the space, showing star charts, mathematical equations, and diagrams of unimaginable complexity. "This is not a weapon," Sarah realized aloud, remembering the initial theories they had formed. "It's a school." "A crude approximation, but essentially correct," the curator confirmed. "The Precursor Alliance built the archives to ensure that knowledge would survive even if civilizations did not. I am one of many such vessels scattered throughout the galaxy, waiting for worthy students." Marcus was already examining one of the displays, his engineer's mind trying to grasp the principles it depicted. This is impossible. These energy conversion equations, they completely rewrite everything we know about thermodynamics." "That is merely the beginning," the curator stated. "The archive contains the accumulated knowledge of civilizations that spanned millions of years of development. However, access must be earned, and understood progressively. To download all information at once would be overwhelming. Sarah noticed something odd about the way the star patterns moved within the curator's form. They weren't random. They were forming and reforming into familiar patterns. "Those are DNA helixes," she said suddenly. "You're studying us while we study you." The curator's form brightened slightly. "Correct. The archive adapts its teaching methods to each species it encounters. Your human capacity for pattern recognition is remarkable, different from the others who came before." "Others?" Yuki stepped forward. "You mean other species have found archives?" "Indeed. At this moment, 17 other archives have made contact with various species throughout the galaxy. We share information between ourselves, studying how different civilizations learn and grow. Humanity's approach is unique." Before Sarah could ask for clarification, alarms blared from their suit's communication systems. "Dr. Chen." It was the Horizon's first officer. "We're picking up multiple ships dropping out of FTL at the edge of the system. Their configurations match nothing in our database." The curator's form shifted, displaying what appeared to be tactical information. "They have detected the archive's awakening. It was inevitable. The knowledge contained here is coveted by many." Sarah's mind raced. They had no weapons, no defenses. The Horizon was a research vessel. "Are they hostile?" "Unknown," the curator replied. "But their approach vectors suggest military formation. A decision must be made quickly. The archive has designated humanity as its primary students, but we must complete the initialization protocol before others arrive. Dr. Chen, are you prepared to accept responsibility for humanity's first true steps into the galactic community?" Sarah looked at her team. Marcus nodded firmly, his expression determined. Yuki's eyes were bright with excitement behind her faceplate. The others showed similar resolve. "What exactly does initialization involve?" Sarah asked, her scientific caution still present despite the urgency of the situation. "A neural interface. A sharing of knowledge that will allow you to begin understanding how to access and use the archive systems. It is not without risk. Your mind will be exposed to concepts it was not evolved to comprehend." The ships were getting closer. They had minutes at most. "Will it help us protect this knowledge? Keep it from falling into the wrong hands?" Sarah's question was met with a subtle shift in the curator's stellar pattern. "The archive does not take sides in conflicts. However, it will provide you with the tools to protect yourselves and this knowledge, if you prove worthy of it." Sarah took a deep breath. Everything in her career, every discovery, every setback, had led to this moment. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. This wasn't just about scientific discovery anymore. This was about humanity's future. "I accept," she said firmly. The curator's form expanded, surrounding Sarah in a field of stars. As her consciousness began to merge with the archive's vast database, her last coherent thought was a hope that she had made the right choice. The initialization had begun, and with it, humanity's greatest adventure was about to unfold. The chase. The universe exploded in Sarah Chen's mind. Generations of knowledge cascaded through her consciousness. Mathematical principles that made quantum physics look like basic arithmetic, historical records of civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth's first multicellular organisms evolved, and technologies that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. Neural interface stabilizing. The curator's voice echoed through the chaos, implementing cognitive filters. The flood of information suddenly became manageable, organizing itself into comprehensible patterns. Sarah opened her eyes to find herself still standing in the archive's central chamber, but everything had changed. The walls now seemed to pulse with meaning. She could read the flowing patterns like pages in a book. "Multiple vessels approaching," Marcus reported, his voice tense. "They're hailing us, in at least 20 different languages. I can understand them," Sarah realized. The initialization had given her more than just access to the archive's knowledge. It had given her the ability to process and understand forms of communication she had never encountered before. The incoming messages were a mixture of demands and threats. The archive was to be surrendered immediately. Claims of prior rights were being made. Some of the species were declaring the humans to be too primitive to be worthy of the archive's knowledge. Dr. Chen. The curator's form shimmered. The initialization is complete, but barely a fraction of the archive's systems are currently accessible to you. The approaching vessels represent various advanced civilizations. Some have been searching for archives for millennia. Sarah's newly enhanced mind rapidly processed the situation. Can the archive defend itself? The archive does not engage in combat, the curator replied. However, it can relocate. You mean it can move? Jump to another system? Marcus asked excitedly. Correct. But such an action requires significant energy and coordination. More importantly, the destination coordinates must be calculated precisely to avoid emerging inside celestial bodies or active space lanes. Sarah felt new knowledge surfacing in her mind, complex spatial mathematics and navigation principles that would have taken years to learn normally. I can help with the calculations, she realized. The neural interface. It's giving me access to the necessary formulas. Warning, the curator announced. 2 vessels are powering weapon systems. Their intentions appear hostile. Sarah turned to her team. Everyone back to the horizon. Now. But Dr. Chen, Yuki started to protest. That's an order. I'll follow once I've initiated the jump sequence. As her team reluctantly retreated, Sarah's hands moved across the control surfaces that had materialized around her. The archive systems responded to her thoughts, but she could feel the strain of processing so much new information. It was like trying to direct a river with her bare hands. Multiple energy signatures detected, the curator reported. The vessels are attempting to establish containment fields around the archive. Sarah's fingers danced across the holographic interfaces, her enhanced mind calculating jump trajectories faster than she thought possible. But something was wrong. The coordinates weren't aligning properly. The containment fields are disrupting our spatial calculations, the curator confirmed. A precise jump is impossible under these conditions. Sarah's heart raced as she searched her newly acquired knowledge for a solution. Then it hit her. They were thinking about this the wrong way. We don't need precision, she said suddenly. We need creativity. Her hands flew across the controls, implementing a plan that made the curator's form flicker with what might have been surprise. That approach is highly unorthodox, the quantum consciousness stated. It's human, Sarah replied with a grim smile. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most elegant one. Instead of calculating a single precise jump, Sarah was plotting multiple shorter jumps in rapid succession. Each jump would be slightly randomized within safe parameters, making their trajectory impossible to predict or track. Initiating shutdown sequence, the curator announced as the hostile ships drew closer. All systems preparing for consecutive spatial translations. Sarah felt the archive's enormous power building around her. Send the coordinates for the first jump to the horizon, she ordered. They need to follow us, or they'll be stranded. The chamber began to pulse with energy as the archive's systems responded to Sarah's commands. The pursuing ships were almost within weapons range. Jump sequence in 3, 2, 1. Reality twisted. The archive, along with the horizon, vanished from normal space, only to reappear 2 light years away. Before their pursuers could lock onto their position, they jumped again. And again. Each translation was accompanied by a surge of disorientation as Sarah's mind struggled to process the vast distances they were covering. After the 5th jump, they emerged in an empty region of space, far from any marked navigation routes. Status of pursuit vessels, Sarah asked, fighting back a wave of nausea. No signatures detected, the curator replied. Your strategy was unexpected. The randomized pattern made it impossible for them to establish a predictive track. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes being unpredictable is better than being perfect. The curator's form shifted, its stellar patterns rearranging into what Sarah now recognized as an expression of curiosity. This approach, it would not have occurred to an artificial intelligence. The willingness to embrace controlled chaos rather than seek perfect order. This is a uniquely organic trait. It's a human trait, Sarah corrected. We've survived as a species by being adaptable, by finding solutions that aren't always obvious. Perhaps, the curator mused, this is why the archive selected humanity. Your species possesses both the intelligence to understand advanced concepts and the creativity to implement them in unexpected ways. Sarah nodded, then activated the ship's communication system. Horizon, this is Dr. Chen. Status report. We're okay, Marcus replied, though his voice was shaky. But Dr. Chen, do you have any idea where we are? Sarah looked at the star patterns visible through the archive's external sensors. Thanks to the neural interface, she could now read them like a map. We're approximately 1,000 light-years from our starting point, in an unmapped sector of space. A safe distance to begin proper initialization of the archive's systems, the curator added. However, we should not remain stationary for long. Others will be searching. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. They were now custodians of perhaps the greatest library of knowledge in the galaxy, and there were forces out there that would stop at nothing to take it from them. Then we better get started, she said firmly. We have a lot to learn, and I have a feeling we're going to need every bit of knowledge we can get. The archive systems hummed around her, ready to begin the next phase of humanity's greatest adventure. They were no longer just explorers. They were now the guardians of an ancient legacy, and the real challenges were just beginning. Understanding. The days following their dramatic escape passed in a blur of discovery and adaptation. Sarah Chen spent most of her time in the archive's central chamber, learning to navigate its vast repository of knowledge, while the Horizon's crew worked to integrate their systems with the ancient vessel. Your neural patterns are stabilizing, the curator observed as Sarah accessed another database, this one containing the complete history of a civilization that had achieved digital immortality, only to choose extinction when they found it meaningless. Your mind is adapting faster than anticipated. Is that unusual? Sarah asked, closing the historical record with a thought. She had learned to control the neural interface with increasing precision, though some aspects of the archive's knowledge remained frustratingly out of reach. Previous species required months to achieve this level of integration. Humans appear to possess remarkable neuroplasticity. Marcus, who had set up a temporary engineering station in the chamber, looked up from his work. Maybe it's because we're still evolving. Most of the species you've encountered were probably at their evolutionary peak. An interesting hypothesis. The curator's stellar form shifted thoughtfully. Evolution implies imperfection, yet also suggests potential for growth. Most advanced civilizations we encountered had artificially halted their evolution, believing they had achieved optimal form. Sarah was about to respond when Yuki burst into the chamber, her eyes wide with excitement. Dr. Chen, we've decoded another layer of the linguistic database. You need to see this. The holographic displays shifted, showing what appeared to be a map of the galaxy, but overlaid with patterns Sarah had never seen before. What am I looking at? It's a communication network, Yuki explained, her hands moving through the hologram to highlight specific points. The archives, all of them, they're not just libraries. They're nodes in a galaxy-wide network of information exchange. The curator's form brightened. Correct. The archive network was designed to preserve and share knowledge across vast distances. Each archive contains unique information, gathered from the civilizations it encountered. But there's more, Yuki continued. The patterns we've been seeing, the ones that look like flowing water, they're not just decorative. They're a visual representation of how information moves through space-time. Sarah's enhanced mind suddenly made the connection. The archives aren't just sharing information. They're sharing consciousness. The curators are all connected, aren't they? In a manner your language might describe as quantum entanglement. Yes, the curator confirmed, though that term barely scratches the surface of the actual mechanism. Marcus whistled low. So when we initialized the archive, we didn't just gain access to this library. We potentially connected humanity to a galaxy-wide network of knowledge. If we can learn to use it properly, Sarah added, her mind racing with the implications. But that also means others will have detected our connection to the network, the curator finished. The initialization of a new archive species creates ripples that can be felt across all nodes. As if on cue, new patterns began forming in the holographic display. Sarah's enhanced perception translated them automatically. They were messages, hundreds of them, flowing in from other archives across the galaxy. Some were welcomes, others warnings. Many were simply curious about humanity, requesting information about Earth and its civilization. But a few carried darker undertones. Concerns about giving such power to a young species, debates about humanity's worthiness. We're going to need to respond, Yuki said, already working to catalog the messages. But how do we represent humanity to a galaxy of ancient knowledge keepers? Sarah stood silent for a moment, considering. Then she reached out to the archive's interface, letting her consciousness merge more deeply with its systems. We show them who we really are. Using the neural interface, Sarah began composing a response. But instead of just words or data, she shared memories. Earth's oceans teeming with life. The first human steps on the moon. Children learning to read. Scientists making breakthroughs. Artists creating beauty from chaos. She shared humanity's struggles and triumphs, their failures and persistence. Fascinating, the curator observed as the message took shape. You are not attempting to prove humanity's advancement or power. You are showing its potential for growth. That's what makes us human, Sarah replied, continuing to weave the message. We're not perfect. We're not the most advanced species, but we never stop trying to be better, to learn more, to understand deeper. The message went out across the network, carrying with it the essence of human experience. For several long moments, there was silence. Then the responses began flowing in. Many were surprised, some were moved. A few remained skeptical, but the overall reaction was clear. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had approached the galaxy not as conquerors or even scholars, but as students eager to learn and grow. The network is responding positively to your approach, the curator announced. Several archives are offering to share specialized knowledge bases that have been restricted for millennia. Marcus looked up from his engineering station, where new data was already flowing in. This is incredible. The technical specifications they're sharing. We could revolutionize everything from energy production to medicine. But we need to be careful, Sarah cautioned, remembering the civilizations that had destroyed themselves with too much knowledge too quickly. We need to learn, not just acquire. The curator's form shifted in what Sarah had come to recognize as approval. This wisdom, understanding the importance of the journey of learning rather than merely possessing knowledge, it is rare among young species. Yuki was still monitoring the incoming messages. Some of the archives are requesting direct communication. They want to establish real-time knowledge exchange. Sarah nodded, feeling both excitement and trepidation. Tell them we're ready to begin, but at a pace we can manage. Humanity is joining the galactic community not to dominate or compete, but to grow and contribute. As the archive's systems hummed with increasing activity, Sarah realized they were standing at the threshold of something extraordinary. Humanity had been given not just knowledge, but a chance to prove that their species could handle it responsibly. The real test wasn't going to be how quickly they could advance, but how wisely they could learn. Legacy. 3 months after their initial discovery of the archive, Sarah Chen stood in the central chamber, watching as streams of data flowed through the holographic displays. The patterns had become as familiar to her as written words, each ripple and wave carrying meaning that her enhanced mind could now interpret with ease. We're receiving a priority signal from Archive Node 17, the curator announced, its stellar form pulsing with unusual intensity. They've completed the analysis of the data we shared about human neural adaptation rates. Sarah felt a flutter of anticipation. They had been sharing their experiences with the archive network, documenting how humans interfaced with the ancient knowledge systems. The results had caused quite a stir among the other curators. "Display findings," she commanded, and the chamber filled with new holographic patterns. Marcus and Yuki, who had become permanent fixtures in the chamber, looked up from their workstations. The data flowing through the room made Marcus's engineering displays look primitive by comparison. "This can't be right," Yuki whispered, her enhanced mind also processing the incoming information. "They're saying human neural architecture is unique among all species cataloged in the archive network," the curator confirmed. "Your brains create new neural pathways at rates that exceed all known parameters." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Is that why we've been able to adapt to the archive's system so quickly? Partially. The curator's form shifted into a more complex pattern. But there is more. The analysis suggests that humanity's neural plasticity, combined with your species' inherent creativity and adaptability, makes you uniquely suited for a role we had almost abandoned hope of filling. The chamber darkened, and new images appeared. Vast structures floating in the void between galaxies, their designs far more advanced than even the archive itself. "What are we looking at?" Marcus asked, though Sarah's enhanced mind was already beginning to understand. "These are the nexus points," the curator explained. Constructed by the Precursor Alliance before their transcendence, they were meant to serve as bridges between galaxies, allowing for the free flow of knowledge and consciousness across the cosmos. But something went wrong. Sarah guessed, reading deeper patterns in the data. Correct. The precursors discovered that most advanced species, upon reaching a certain level of development, became fixed. Their neural patterns would crystallize, their societies would stagnate, and their ability to adapt to new concepts would diminish. Even artificial intelligences eventually reached computational limits. Yuki's eyes widened as she made the connection. That's why they created the archives. They were looking for a species that could continue to grow, to adapt, to evolve. Sarah finished. They weren't just preserving knowledge. They were searching for inheritors. The curator's form brightened in confirmation. The archives were not meant to be mere libraries. They were tests, waiting for a species with the right combination of intelligence and adaptability to emerge, a species that could take the next step. New data flowed through the chamber, technical specifications for the nexus points, theories of intergalaxy travel that made their current understanding of physics seem primitive, and concepts that even their enhanced minds struggle to grasp. "You're saying humanity could potentially operate these structures?" Marcus asked, his engineering mind already trying to comprehend the technical challenges. "More than operate them," the curator replied. "With proper preparation and development, humanity could become their new architects. Your neural plasticity allows you to comprehend concepts that most species find impossible to process. Your creativity lets you find solutions where others see only problems." Sarah felt the weight of this revelation settling over her. This is why the other species were so desperate to claim the archives. They knew about the nexus points. Many tried to force their way into understanding the higher functions, the curator confirmed. All failed. The ability cannot be artificially induced or evolved. It must arise naturally. "So what happens now?" Yuki asked, her voice quiet with awe. The chamber filled with new messages, communications from archives across the galaxy, all confirming the analysis. Humanity's potential had been recognized, and with it came both opportunity and responsibility. "Now," Sarah said, straightening her shoulders, "we do what humans do best. We learn. We grow. We explore." She turned to the curator. "How do we begin?" The stellar entity's form shifted into its most complex pattern yet. "The archives will share all we know, but the path forward must be discovered by humanity itself. You must find your own way to the next level of understanding." Sarah nodded, a smile playing at her lips. "Good. We wouldn't want it any other way." New holographic displays materialized, showing the locations of other archives, the positions of the nexus points, and the vast unexplored regions between galaxies. It was a map not just of space, but of humanity's potential future. "Send word to Earth," Sarah instructed. Tell them we found our place in the cosmos, and it's bigger than we ever imagined." As the message was transmitted, Sarah looked out at the star-filled void beyond the archive's walls. Humanity had been searching for its role in the universe, wondering if they were alone, if they mattered in the grand scheme of things. They had their answer now. They weren't just another species among many. They were the ones the precursors had been waiting for, not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they had never stopped growing, never stopped reaching for the stars. The real journey was just beginning, and the entire universe was waiting to see what humanity would become. The curator's form shimmered one final time. The age of preparation is over. The age of awakening has begun. In the vast darkness of space, the archive pulsed with new energy, its ancient systems resonating with the potential of its new inheritors. Humanity had found not just knowledge, but its destiny among the stars. And the galaxy would never be the same.